$5 billion. It looks to me an equivalent middle school size project was about the medium sized project. There are approximately 3,000 projects done in the last 12 years. And it seems to me like there should be some additional data with regard to defaults, change orders, and whatnot on those projects. No specific data on these projects has been presented. In fact, in previous testimony before other committees, the projects that were used fell out of the period during the last 3 years. So there are projects that were occurring before the constriction in the marketplace. The other reason that I oppose the bill is because the bill contains a mandate in a disguised form that the DIR format be used for pre-qualification. I took a look at the last addition project that we bid on a high school project and noticed that if all of the general contractors, including ourselves, were pre-qualified, and all of the subcontractors, approximately 200 of them, were required to fill out these documents, the DIR form, there would have been 15,000 pages of review required on that project. I looked at a high school we're currently building for $80 million in Riverside. We don't have 15,000 pages of documents to construct the project. That is correspondence, documentation in our files. That's the magnitude of effort that will be required and placed on school districts as a result of this bill. If you look at the circumstance...
I'm going to have to get you to wrap it up.
I'll go real quick here. With regard to the multiple prime projects, I am not able to place a magnitude on that because now all the subcontractors become prime contractors and all of their listed subcontractors are going to be required to fill out the DIR form and pre-qualify in advance. I realize there's a 3% requirement change in the bill, but we will not know what that 3% is in advance. So by default, all subcontractors and prime contractors are going to have to fill out these documents. It could be in the magnitude of 4 to 5 times greater than the GC circumstance.
Thank you, sir. Next witness.
Dennis Myers, California Association of School Business Officials in Opposition. Appreciate the amendments. We'll need to look at those and measure to see if it changes our position. Not convinced that it goes far enough, but still want to obviously work with the author on that. But our opposition is based on what you heard from the two previous witnesses, just line by line. That's our concerns with the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and members, Brian Rivas on behalf of the California School Boards Association. We too would like to thank Senator Rubio and the sponsors for considering and accepting the amendments. I'd like to study them a little further. Appreciate your staff's work on that. At this point, we're still opposed, unfortunately, and primarily because this would require pre-qualification in order to draw down matching funds from the state school facilities program. Well, right now, districts have the option to use pre-qualification, but some may have found that it wasn't necessary because they're happy with the quality of bids and the quality of contractors in their region. And unfortunately, we see this as a costly mandate to follow pre-qualification because it requires a substantial amount of time and staff time and resources to administer the ratings and the legally required appeals process. So for those reasons, we're opposed.
Laura Preston with the Association of California School Administrators. We are also still in opposition. We haven't had a chance to really review the amendments in totality, but I guess the one thing that I want to add is that school districts throughout the state vary significantly, and pre-qualification may work in some districts, like LA has pre-qualification requirements now. Other districts it may not, and so we are opposed typically to a broad blanket mandate across the state.
Thank you. And then if you'll just state your name, organization, and position. Sure. Thank you.
Michelle McKay Underwood on behalf of Torrance Unified School District in opposition.
Thank you.
Terry Burns on behalf of San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Gary Thomas, in opposition.
Any other witnesses in opposition? See none? Questions, comments from members? Ms. Carter.
Will this completed form be available to the public?
Yes, it will be, and per one of the amendments that, working with committee staff, we had language in the form to be substantially similar. Now the DIR questionnaire will simply be a guideline for the local district to provide greater flexibility and authority for the local school districts to establish that document, and yes, it will be made public.
Thank you.
Ms. Buchanan.
In 1998, our school district passed a $70 million bond, which resulted in about $130 million in projects. And they were all finished around 2002 or so. But one of the problems we had is that school districts have to take the low bid. And there are sometimes, you know, there may only be a fraction of a percent that separates that low bidder from the next one. And you know you've had problems or whatever, you don't know. And projects get delayed and you have problems as you go through. And so then we passed another bond in 2002. Keep in mind, we're at the height of construction in California where, you know, contractors are walking onto whether it's school campuses or other construction sites, and you're a construction manager and saying, Cesar, I'll give you a $20,000 raise if you come work for me, because workers were that much in demand. So we passed a $260 million bond, but decided we were going to go to pre-qualification. And it was a big decision for our school district. So even in the height of the construction, when people said, well, you won't get as many bidders, and we're worried about it, we had, you know, 6 or more bidders for each project. Our projects were done on time, under budget, and even the skeptics in our district became a big fan of pre-qualification, as I did myself. And yes, it does take a little bit more time up front, but actually it saved time over the period of the project because you're not going through it every single time you bid. So I personally am a big fan of pre-qualification because I do think it saves time and money. However, I have two questions. One is I would like you to respond to the multiple prime situations because that does, you know, work out well, particularly if you've got a big high school that you're building.
I didn't catch the question.
Multiple prime,
yeah.
How you're impacting there. And then the second comment that's important to me that I hope you will work through between now and when it goes to the floor, there are some projects that I do believe are at a level that should not be required for pre-qualification. So I don't know whether the right level is $1 million or $500,000 or $750 million, whatever it is. But that's going to be important for me to see that when it comes to the floor because there's got to be some kind of reasonableness there. You're not going to have a 50 or 100, you know, you're not going to go replace air conditioning at a school and expect to go through that. So there's got to be something that's reasonable so school districts can operate there. But I think definitely if you're passing a big bond and you're embarking on major projects, to me it makes sense.
Well, thank you, Assemblywoman. To tackle your last question first, the 1 million number or more is something that I'd like to work with you and your staff with as we move through this process. Certainly there will be some figure should it get out of appropriations and make it to the Assembly floor, and so you can count on that. In working with committee staff, that was a number that was established, and so I'd like to work with you to see if you'd like that increased or decreased or whichever it may be. Do you want to answer the first one?
Yeah, I think to answer the question that was posed by the construction managers is that the flexibility is provided to school districts to pre-qualify on a yearly basis, or they can do it per project. I think the example that he was citing is that every time they're going to do a project, they have to pre-qualify, and that's not the flexibility that's provided to the districts now.
And what we did is we did pre-qualification by size of project. So if you're going to do a project that was, you know, X million or less, we had certain requirements, Y million or whatever, so they were just pre-qualified up front to bid on them. People could be added, but it made the process was just much smoother than what we had experienced. And like I said, our prices came in great. Even at the peak of construction, all of our projects were finished on time, under budget, and it was a very positive experience.
Any other questions? Moved by Mr. Amiano, seconded by Ms. Buchanan. And I think on the, you know, we're talking about the amendment that you're going to take in appropriations. That I think what our request was that it would be, you know, at the $1 million level in terms of going to. Okay. There's a motion and a second, and it's due pass as amended to appropriations. Would you like to close?
Aside from bringing all of you a sandwich from across the hall, I would respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you very much. And will the secretary
I'll bring you
Secretary,
two.
call the roll.
Brownlee?
Aye.
Brownlee, aye. Norby?
No.
Norby, no. Buchanan? I'm sorry, Amiano? Amiano, aye. Buchanan? Buchanan, aye. Butler? Butler, aye. Carter? Carter, aye. Ing? Ing, aye. Gaines? Gaines, no. Halderman? Wagner? Wagner, no. Williams? 6 votes.
6 votes, your bill is out.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. So now we move to Mr. Liu. Item 21, SB 919. There we go. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Let me start by saying I'm happy to take the committee's suggested amendments as mentioned on page 3. These amendments will clarify the definition of sexting. There is a growing and troublesome problem occurring in our schools, and that is young children participating in this new phenomenon known as sexting. The disturbing part is that when they send these texts, oftentimes it's done during the school day, and they're photos, videos, and messages. And when they're in a, let's say, a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, it's all okay, and then one of them breaks up, they get mad, and then they mass distribute these sexually explicit messages to other classmates. This has led to extreme humiliation, embarrassment, and in 2 cases, suicide. In terms of how prevalent this is, a 2008 survey showed that 20% of all surveyed teens between the ages of 13 and 19 have been sent or posted nude or semi-nude pictures or videos of themselves. 38% of teen girls say they have had sexually suggestive messages shared with them that were originally intended for someone else. And with that, I would love to have a aye vote, and basically this gives schools additional disciplinary tools to discipline students that engage in this inappropriate behavior.
Thank you. Witnesses in support of the bill. Witnesses in opposition.
Tiffany Mock with the ACLU. I would like to first thank the author for the extensive conversations we've had on finding a medium between free speech rights of kids and providing the safest environment. With the newest amendments, however, with the provision and the term sexually explicit being undefined in current California state law, we unfortunately will have to oppose this bill with that language in the amendment. Today's committee amendment basically allows a student to be suspended for sending with intent to humiliate or harass another student something that's sexually explicit. This vague term leaves open to sort of the vagueness that I feel like brought us here. Bullying is a prevalent problem, and sexting is even worse. We came to the table trying to find a way to create a very clear wording so that everyone would know exactly what constituted sexting, with the phrase sexually explicit that we have not found in any penal code or education code. But through just looking through Google searches, what is defined as sexually explicit can range from anything from your swimsuit issue of Sports Illustrated to anyone just wearing a shirt that might be showing a little bit too much. And for those reasons, of course, we'll be happy to work with staff and continue this discussion, but at this time we regretfully have an opposition.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition? Comments? Questions? Certainly, from my perspective on this bill, we spent a lot of time in our office talking about this bill, and I continue to be open to other language of how we get there. But I think for me, my call was, if you're sending pictures where there's nudity and other kinds of things involved of another student, and that student is identifiable, that's not okay in a school community. If they're sending nude pictures of people randomly, I don't think it's great, but I think that, it's a rite of passage in some sense where, kids looked at Playboy magazines in my day. Now, it's on the web. So, but, that was sort of my threshold, getting to, I thought the language that the ACLU had presented was too narrow on very specific and very narrow body parts. And I just felt like it needed to be broader, not, so it's, I'm not sure how to get there either, because my staff went through the same exercise as well. We Googled to try to find where some compromise language could be, and we couldn't come up with it.
I guess for us, we just wanted to make sure the nudity of a foot or a hand was, I guess, treated differently than nudity of a, quote, private part that, would be defined under the penal code. And so
right.
Without that sort
and
of
I can
being
understand
defined,
how that language would be narrowed, how it, that particular example. But, where I want to get to is if a picture of a child is being sent to other kids where that person is in a vulnerable position and they're identifiable, that can cause real
pain.
Emotional impact to them, and sometimes emotional impact that is non-recoverable in some sense, then that's not okay. And so I just don't know quite how to get there. But that was where, generally where I was trying to draw the line.
Thank you. Happy to work with the chair and also their opposition as we proceed. There is some protection because you also have their intent to harass or humiliate in there as well. And so it's not just a straight there's more than that element required.
Ms. Carter and then Mr. Norby.
Do the students need to be at school, or they could be at home as long as it's about a student at their school?
It's got to at school or some school event, or they could be at school, but let's say at an after-school event, but they got to be. It can't be at home.
But if they had done it at home, but it's about a student at their school, is it still included in here?
No, but if they get to school and then, let's say, re-forward that, then it would trigger it. Yeah.
Mr. Norby.
There's a tendency, I think, generally to overreact to these types of situations. The fact is that teen violence is down, teen suicide rates are down, school violence rates are down, and I see a lot of bills aimed at teen behavior, which tends to add to the stigma that somehow the kids today are worse than we were. In fact, they're probably better behaved. They just have tools that we don't have. I know that there are kids, girls themselves, who've sent these pictures that have been sent to jail for distributing underage porn when it was of themselves. They shouldn't have done it, but those laws probably shouldn't apply to these girls. I think, and relative to that this is a fairly modest proposal that might give some administrators some tools. But in the end, no one would get these pictures if people weren't sending them of themselves, and that's where we ought to start. I've got a 12-year-old daughter. I just got her a cell phone because she agreed to do some diaper changing. I told her, I don't want pictures of her out there, but it begins with her not sending them in the first place.
Although I think there could be, boyfriend, girlfriend, they, break up and boyfriend sends the picture or whatever, that.
Still probably shouldn't send them to a boyfriend.
Correct. That's the point well taken. All right. Is there a motion on the bill? Moved by Ms. Carter. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Butler, I saw first. So, and the motion is due pass as amended to appropriations. Would you like to close?
Would be honored for an aye vote.
Thank you. Secretary, call the roll.
Brownlee?
Aye.
Brownlee, aye. Norby? Aye. Norby, aye. Amiano? Aye. Amiano, aye. Buchanan? Butler? Butler, aye. Carter? Carter, aye. Ing? Ing, aye. Gaines? Gaines, aye. Halderman? Wagner? Wagner, aye. Williams? 8 votes.
Pardon me?
8.
8 votes. 8 votes. Your bill is out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Senator Liu, item 23, SCR 18. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members. This is simple, hopefully. SCR 18 recognizes the importance of data on health, school culture, and climate in our schools. Until recently, federal funding for Safe and Drug-Free Schools and Communities program provided districts and communities with the resources needed to monitor school safety and climate, student engagement, and non-academic learning barriers such as substance abuse, bullying, health issues, and violence. Unfortunately, the federal Safe and Drug-Free School program has been eliminated, and this jeopardizes the California School Climate Health and Learning Survey System, which was previously required to be in compliance with federal law. These surveys are more commonly referred to as California Healthy Kids Survey, the School Climate Survey, and the Parent Survey. This resolution acknowledges the importance of data on health, school culture, and climate, and calls upon the state to ensure that these surveys remain viable. The resolution urges the state to pursue federal funding, grants, and other sources to support these surveys. SCR 18 is sponsored by Children Now and has extensive support. And with me today to answer questions is Brad Strong from Children Now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brad Strong with Children Now. These surveys are important for districts and communities to identify and address climate, safety, and health issues. If we're worried about bullying, if we're worried about student safety, if we're worried about substance abuse, student connectedness, and maintaining the viability of these, maintaining the viability of these surveys is of critical importance. It's also supported by the Alliance for Boys and Girls Clubs, the Family Resource Association, the Health Centers Association, the California State PTA, and a number of others. We hope we can count on your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Monique Ramos on behalf of Superintendent of Public Instruction Tom Torlakson. This is an incredibly important program. California is one of the leaders in the country with its Healthy Kids Survey, and we would be very saddened to see it go. And much of the data we collected from that is used for legislation and various purposes. Thank you.
Very good. Other witnesses in support? Very good. Other witnesses in support? Other witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, the bill has been moved and has a second. The motion is to be adopted. Would you like to close, Senator?
Simply ask for your support on the bill.
Thank you very much. Any questions? No more questions. Let's, Secretary, please call the roll.
Brownlee?
Aye.
Brownlee, aye. Norby?
No.
Norby, no. Amiano? Amiano, aye. Buchanan? Buchanan, aye. Butler? Butler, aye. Carter? Carter, aye. Ing? Ing, aye. Gaines? Gaines, no. Halderman? Wagner? Wagner, no. Williams? Williams, aye.
Very good. Your bill is up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
members.
Senator. Now we have Senator Hancock, SB 500, item 9. Welcome this evening.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I hope everybody is doing well.
We're getting to the end of the calendar, so
yes,
we're feeling better.
Well, Madam Chair, in presenting Senate Bill 500, which will provide for continued funding for 75 of the 186 California Partnership Academies currently funded through Senator Scott's bill from 2005, SB 70. This was a major effort to fund career education in partnership between K-12 and community colleges. Unfortunately, the commitment to the programs will sunset on June 30th, 2012. Unless we extend the sunset, many of the partnership academies will be left ineligible for state funds should such funds be appropriated and available. I would like to accept the amendments recommended in the analysis and again would simply remind us all that only 4 in 10 Americans complete an associate or bachelor's degree by their mid-20s. We need young people to learn about real jobs and real careers. Many of them will be inspired to do better in higher education. We want them also to be able to go into good jobs and careers right after high school. these partnership academies are probably the very most successful models that we have for career technical education. And I would ask for your aye vote. There is no money in the bill and will not be unless money is appropriated by the legislature.
Thank you, Senator. Witnesses and support.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. Janice Warden Washington on behalf of the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tom Torlakson, who is proud to be the sponsor of this legislation. I want to thank your committee for a thoughtful and your committee staff for a thoughtful and thorough analysis on this measure. SB 500 is a bill that will allow partnership academies to continue to at least move through in the process. Partnership academies are at the forefront of local and state efforts to integrate rigorous academics and career technical education. They are an effective education reform model that provide an integrated learning program and high motivation toward pursuing skilled occupational fields for students at risk of dropping out of school and for students not motivated by a regular educational curriculum. And there's so much more great things that people can learn about the partnership academies. And so with that, I have with me Kent Pinkering, who is the coordinator of the Elk Grove High School Technology and Digital Arts Academy and chair of the Elk Grove High School Art Department to testify in support, and also Dr. Keith Edmonds with the Secondary Career and Adult Learning Division of the Department of Education in support and to answer technical questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Please proceed.
I would say good afternoon, but I think it's good evening
It's
by
good
now.
evening.
Good evening.
I've been an educator for 20 years, and 3 years ago we became a Partnership Academy, Technology and Digital Arts. I got my first group of students, and I would have to say very interesting to say the least. One of them was a 6'4" freshman, came with the baggage of 7 Fs. And then I had a 5 foot, 90-pound, very shy girl also with the baggage of a series of Fs. And I thought to myself, what did I get myself into? Well, fast forward 3 years later, with the tools of mentoring, interventions, guest speakers, common planning time, real-world applications, cross-curriculum projects, motivational activities to engage the students, combined with field trips, community project, we turned these two around and many more. Godfrey, now a 6'5" senior, who was suspended for stealing a piece of pizza as a sophomore because his free lunch just didn't fill him up, has not had an F since his first semester of his sophomore year. In fact, he finished this year and graduated on time with 3 Cs, 2 Bs, and an A. Evie, the 90-pound shy girl, became a leader in the classroom and in the community, and this summer she will spend a month in Thailand volunteering at an orphanage. These two students, with so many other students, have been set on a positive educational life path. With continued CPA funding, we will be able to reach thousands of students. With money from partnership academies, it allows us to give at-risk students opportunities to succeed. It gives us, the teachers, the tools, the mentoring, the interventions to keep these students interested and engaged. It allows us to keep them in school, allow them to be successful community contributors. Some students need that little extra. They're at risk for being disengaged. They're at risk for dropping out. They are economically disadvantaged. These things teach them the skills to be successful in life and in society. Partnership academies, by combining academics and vocational teaching, gives them those students the tools. This is what we do. We want we want to have a society of complete contributors. We're giving these students a chance. We're giving them the tools for success. On behalf of Elk Grove Unified School District's partner academies and SB 70 funded academies, we encourage you to continue this valuable funding resource at a time when California schools must continue to do more with less. This funding is crucial in helping to continue to educate students like Godfrey and Evie and all the other at-risk students. Every student should have a dream. Every student should have a place to dream, and these academies give these kids that place to dream. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Terry Burns on behalf of the California Association of Leaders of Career Preparation. Partnership academies are one of our flagship programs. They include teachers who have real-life experience in business to train children how to proceed and perform in that environment, as well as high-performing academic teachers. preparing these students for career and college, both. These academies link into ROPs, which give students the capstone courses that they need. These programs have very high performance levels that show students graduate at a higher rate, have higher academics scores than their colleagues in other schools, and students appreciate, they come out with a lot of choices in this regard. So we would very much appreciate your support.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support?
I think you heard me, California State PTA support.
We need you on record. Other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Seeing none? Questions, comments?
Move the bill.
Bill has been moved. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Carter. The motion is due pass as amended to the Appropriations Committee. Thank you for taking the amendments. It's a great bill. We need to continue to support partnership academies and really appreciate your testimony to bring what really is happening in these schools. So thank you very much. And Senator, would you like to close?
Just, I appreciated the comments as well, and I hear that from so many teachers in academies like this. So I would ask for your aye vote.
Thank you very much. Secretary, call the roll.
Brownlee?
Aye.
Brownlee, aye. Norby? Amiano? Aye. Amiano, aye. Buchanan? Buchanan, aye. Butler? Butler, aye. Carter? Carter, aye. Ing? Gaines? Gaines, aye. Halderman? Wagner? Wagner, aye. Williams? Williams, aye. Okay, Norby, aye.
How many votes?
Okay, we've got 4, 6,
9 votes.
Thank you all.
That's a winner for today. 9 votes. All right, Senator, we're going to SB 740. You're on a roll.
Members, SB 740 will align California's elementary and high school STAR program, assessments and reporting, with the federal No Child Left Behind Act and the assessment component of the new Common Core standards toward which California schools are moving. As the state moves toward a new assessment program based on the recently approved Common Core standards, assessments will be developed by 2 consortia, SPARC and Smarter Balanced. California recently joined the governing body of the Smarter Balanced Consortium, but both consortia are developing tests for grades 3 through 12. Neither is developing a second grade test. After discussions in the Senate Education and Appropriations Committee, amendments were taken in appropriations to maximize the savings while ensuring that local districts do have access to quality diagnostic tests, which are a very different kind of assessment during the second grade. So SB 740 directs the State Superintendent of Public Instruction to identify 3 diagnostic assessments in English language arts and mathematics for second grade teachers to use. And we have looked at those, and the Secretary of Education or the Superintendent of Public Instruction has looked, and there are at least 3 tests that conform to California standards, and there are diagnostic tests and they're off-the-shelf tests that can be easily made available to school districts. We know that it's critical to a student's long-term academic success to be competent in reading skills by grade 3, so the information from the diagnostic tests will allow teachers to assess where the students are and make sure that they have the appropriate instruction. According to the National Center on Education Statistics, Only 5 states currently have a reading and language arts or mathematics standardized test for 2nd grade. And with the new standards, all states will be reviewing their current assessment programs. By eliminating the 2nd grade standards-based test and focusing on classroom instruction, the state will save approximately $2 million a year. But more important to me is really the impact on instructions for young people. And almost every major assessment group in the country has concluded that standardized tests for children under the age of 8 are developmentally inappropriate and unreliable. Everyone believes that it would be good to have diagnostic tests that can be used by teachers so that there can be feedback directly into instructions. And I will say that I appreciate the committee analysis very much because it really laid out all the reasons why testing children under the age of 8 is inappropriate. AB 740 sponsors the California Federation of Teachers. The bill is supported by the PTA, the California School Boards Association, the Superintendent of Public Instruction, CTA, and LA Unified School District. I ask for your aye vote and refer to...
Is there a second on the bill? Second by Ms. Buchanan. Witnesses in support.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Lynn Fox. I'm with the California Federation of Teachers. We are the proud sponsors of this bill. And today, I'm proud to have with me 2 of our members who are 2nd grade teachers in Petaluma. We have Dana Morellini and Valerie Joyner, who will both speak to the issues of the bill and give you a 2nd grade teacher's perspective on this measure.
Excellent.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Dana Morellini, and I teach 2nd grade in Sonoma County. In April, I had the opportunity to speak to the Senate Education Committee on this Bill 740, and my experience was a first-timer, and I heard opposition, and there wasn't really a forum for me to address the opposition. So what I've done for you, because I'm a teacher, you have a packet, I think, and the front of the packet is sort of my counter, my rebuttal to that opposition. But what I'd like to share with you was my statement to the Senate Education Committee, if that's all right.
Excellent.
Most of my work in 2nd grade involves building confidence and motivation in children who, when they are in 1st grade, can feel the disappointment and anxiety of not being able to read quickly or to write easily. Please keep in mind a typical 2nd grader is 7, going on 8, and becoming an accomplished reader and writer by the end of 1st grade is not developmentally realistic, but it's a pressure they feel nonetheless. I have had the experience of giving the STAR test to 2nd graders in 2 very different settings, formerly at a socioeconomically disadvantaged Title I school, and currently at one of California's distinguished Blue Ribbon schools. While there are many inequities between these 2 schools, both groups of children face similar setbacks and consequences from STAR testing due to their age. During testing, I have seen children A, race through a test, B, bubble everything, C, bubble nothing, D, complain of being tired or having a headache, E, repeatedly break pencils, and many things, bathroom breaks, going to the bathroom, and many things. This type of anxious behavior is markedly different than any other assessment I give young children. This past spring, a 2nd grade colleague of mine described the STAR testing experience perfectly. She said it was like her former days as a hostage negotiator. She explained that the testing environment brought back feelings of extreme stress in trying to maintain control of the situation, knowing that any minute something could go horribly wrong. 6, 7, and 8-year-olds should have legislative distinction from high school seniors when testing, but they do not. None of us believe it was ever really the intention of California's legislature to deliver an assessment that creates stress, fear, and doubt in our youngest learners. I would like to help alleviate any fears or misconceptions regarding the identification of students who are struggling. Primary teachers assess and monitor learning all year long. It's what we do. In fact, I would argue that our best assessments, the ones that actually guide our instruction during the day, do not come from the state of California. They come from scholars and experts in the field of early childhood education. They're also generated by teachers who need to work with young children as individual learners to address their specific needs. I feel confident that you could walk into any primary classroom in California, point to any student, and ask the teacher, how is that child doing? And they would be able to tell you exactly where that student struggles or excels in his or her learning. As a second grade teaching professional in California, I feel very secure in my belief that the discontinuation of the STAR test for second grade will not have an adverse impact on our students. The bigger problem for our students today is the loss of class size reduction. Primary classrooms hold anywhere between 25 to 30 students, and we have lost the inability to work with children frequently as individuals and in smaller groups. We also now have fewer days to make a significant impact on their learning. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to have you here.
Thank you.
My name is Valerie Joyner, and I've been a teacher in the Petaluma City Schools for over 30 years. 20-plus years have been with second grade, 1-2 or 2-3 combination classes, and I have a Master's of Arts degree with curriculum teaching and learning. Tonight I'd like to speak up for our 7- and 8-year-olds, their parents, and the teachers who are involved with the STAR tests every year. There are numerous issues of concern about the validity and developmental appropriateness of second grade testing. Research speaks to the lack of the validity and usefulness of this testing. As a teacher of second grade, I believe that, one, the CST, or STAR, does not adequately inform me about the educational needs of my students. Young children in the early years of their education need ongoing assessments throughout the year so that as a teacher I can always provide for their current needs. Another issue related is the second grade portion of the STAR test. All three sections of the math portion of the STAR test are given auditorily. The teacher reads the question, repeats the question, then the students begin to process of solving the problem. The problem is not written on the student page, so I ask you, are we assessing students' proficiency in math and problem solving or their auditory memory skills? A student with strong math skills but poor auditory skills may or may not be able to show his or her proficiency. This puts in question the validity of the test. These issues go far beyond the two examples I have given you, so I therefore respectfully support the elimination of second grade testing. In addition, I've been asked to deliver a message from Dr. Linda Darling Hammond of Stanford University. She is currently traveling. Dr. Darling Hammond was President Obama's chief education advisor during his campaign and is one of the nation's leading education experts. Her statement is as follows: mass administered testing in second grade is generally deemed developmentally inappropriate and an inaccurate tool for gathering valid information. As a consequence, the vast majority of states begin large-scale testing in third grade. There are other tools that can be and often are used in classrooms to gather diagnostic information. For example, the DRA, Developmental Reading Assessment, and others that are individually administered, which can be managed at the school and district level. Consequently, I support the bill to eliminate second grade testing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and it's very nice to have you here as well. Thank you. Other witnesses in support?
Patty Scripter, California State PTA. As you heard in Senator Hancock's open, that the National PTA has long had a position statement in opposition to standardized testing of early children, and California State PTA supports diagnostic testing, developmentally appropriate testing, and testing that gives information to parents on how their children are doing. If you've had a child in the public schools, they've gone through the testing in the spring where you have to get up sleep and get them early and get them breakfast and get them to school. And it is stressful for our youngest children, But then as you wait, and then come August or September, you get a letter in the mail, and it has a little chart, and it has little boxes with little numbers in it, and it doesn't really have meaning to most parents about how their child's doing in school. So we really support the focus of this bill, which is on the benchmark testing, which happens more frequently. It's the direction we're going with Common Core assessments that tells parents throughout the year how their child are doing. It's not a single high-stakes test score, and it's developmentally appropriate. We liked the bill better when the money stayed on developing and focusing on the second-grade assessments, because we do think it's important to have those assessments, because we all know the statistics on reading. But we really believe that eliminating standardized second-grade testing is the way to go, that there are much more appropriate tests for kids that will give parents information and schools information about how their kids are doing and can address their needs.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support?
Virginia Strong Martin on behalf of Los Angeles Unified District. For all the reasons that you've heard today, we're in strong support of the bill.
Thank you.
Martha Zaragoza Diaz representing Californians Together. Ditto.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members. Janice Warden on behalf of the State Superintendent of Public Instruction and Support. We apologize we weren't able to get our letter on record in time. I would like to add, though, in terms of using off-the-shelf diagnostic options for grade 2 testing, there are multiple options that districts would be able to choose from, and CDE would be tasked with identifying those assessments and making them available and ready for the teachers in the districts. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Erica Hoffman on behalf of the California School Boards Association, also in support.
Tony Triguero on behalf of the California Teachers Association, a proud sponsor of this bill previously. We're delighted to see it back. Thank you.
Excellent. Other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition?
Chairwoman Brownlee, members of the committee, my name is Arun Ramanathan. I'm Executive Director of the Education Trust West. We're an organization that focuses on eliminating the achievement gap for Latino and African American students and low-income students in the state of California. And we oppose this legislation, or we oppose this bill. We believe, first, that the elimination of second-grade assessments administered through the STAR program will have a series of negative impacts for Latino students, African American students, and low-income students in our education system. We know that our students are already entering school at a significant disadvantage, and we know how important the early grades are for learning the fundamentals of math and English language arts, and how early indicators of academic proficiency are a strong sign of future academic success and failure. It's something that the folks who are constructing our prisons have figured out at a very early age, that those indicators have a long-term impact. We also know that without second-grade testing, we will not know how well our early learners are doing in core academic subject areas. We will not be able to establish baselines for performance or determine the size of achievement gaps, as well as the necessary state and local policies to close those gaps. As a result, our highest need students will likely fall further behind. Furthermore, without reliable, clear, and transparent statewide data on second-grade achievement, parents and communities will not know which elementary schools are failing to close the achievement gap, and which elementary schools are starting with the gap at a very low level. For these reasons, and for one final reason, as a former special educator and someone who led the second largest special education system in the state of California, I can't tell you how many times I heard, we need to test this kid and get them out of our classroom. And quite frankly, there is no more high-stakes assessment than special education testing that occurs at the preschool level, at the kindergarten level, the first grade level, and the second grade level. Now, we are willing, as educators and as a state, to make these kinds of determinations at a very early age that have long-term implications for our students. But we are not similarly willing, if we pass this legislation, to ensure that we are holding the adults in our system accountable for making sure that our children are reaching English and math proficiency at a critical early age. Thank you very much. We oppose this legislation.
Thank you. Next witness.
Sherry Griffith with the Association of California School Administrators, and we would associate our comments as well with Ed Trust West and talk about a few things that concern us in regards to the measure. We've actually surveyed over 15,000 administrators statewide over a 3-year period on this measure because it's been before you before. And while the test is not perfect, and we have called for a simplified, more appropriate assessment, our members do not want to see this test eliminated for a number of reasons. One is, if for those of you that recall the report Here We Come, Ready or Not by former Superintendent Honig, this state made a commitment that all students would be reading by 3rd grade. And we have a significant concern that without some type of universal assessment to that effect, we will not know universally if students are moving in that direction because they would not be assessed universally until the end of 3rd grade. That concerns us greatly. We think the bill, its May 10th version, was better because there were required diagnostic assessments that were developed by this state for this state. The language as it reads now is a may, not a shall. It's off the shelf and isn't really associated, we think at this point, because we haven't seen them, with California's needs. While we completely appreciate the work of teachers and respect greatly their work in developing their own benchmark assessments and diagnostic assessments, it is our district administrators and school principals that feel there must be retained a focus on a vision for closing the achievement gap for all students, and we think part of that is an assessment of reading readiness and math proficiency as we move to the 3rd and 4th grade, where, as you know, with reading, it's a gateway skill. If we don't get it right by 3rd, no later than 4th grade, these students will not go on to academic proficiency. Finally, the $2 million in savings. We proposed strongly that these funds stay with 2nd graders, not for the department to identify off-the-shelf assessments, but for the full development of appropriate diagnostic assessments. For us, it's not about the API and gaining scores. For us, it's about reading readiness and math proficiency, and for those reasons, we oppose.
Next witness.
Good evening. My name is Doug McRae. I'm a retired educational measurement specialist from Monterey. In my 40 years in the dealing with K-12 tests, I've helped many states with their statewide assessment systems, including serving as an advisor for the STAR program in the late 90s. I'm opposed to 740. I think the importance of learning to read by 3rd grade has been mentioned, is immense. It's arguably the most important thing our school system does. Learning to read by 3rd grade allows kids to read to learn later on. I'd like to address briefly some of the points brought up by the supporters. That 2nd grade tests are stressful. It can be, but it depends upon how they are administered. If there's a stressful situation for the kids, they will react to it. If it's appropriately administered, you will not have excess stress for those. The auditory administration of tests, that mirrors instruction at that point in the child's in the educational system. The technical quality of the 2nd grade tests, the STAR tests, are extremely comparable to the technical quality and the validity of tests that are, as a matter of fact, they're better than the diagnostic tests. The STAR tests are better than the diagnostic tests. The developmentally inappropriate charges, there's division of opinion, contrary to what the senator said, division of opinion on developmental appropriateness. If you look at the National Association of Education of Young Children's statement, it says standardized tests should be used with discretion, limited to situations where such measures are appropriate and beneficial. And I would judge that they are appropriate, and I think in terms of the use of the data of the STAR tests, it's extremely beneficial in measuring whether we're on track in teaching our kids to learn. There was an article.
I'm going to ask you to wrap up.
Okay. Quickly, diagnostic tests are good. They're part of the instructional system. This bill really is not, in my opinion, aimed at the early childhood tests. It's aimed at reducing accountability of adults in this situation. And also, the last comment I will make is that Yes, it will save $2 million. I believe that $2 million is well spent. If you want to save dollars, look at your high school tests where you have excess test, unneeded test administrations, redundant test administrations. You can save at least 3 times the money.
Thank you. So if you can just state your name, organization, and your position on the bill.
Sure. Selena Koo, Special Education Attorney and member of CAPCA. We're a volunteer-run statewide organization of parents, advocates, professionals, and attorneys who monitor and sponsor policy and legislation affecting the education of children with disabilities.
I'm sorry, it looks like you have a longer testimony. We have copies of it, and our rules are 6 minutes on each side, and then to just state your name and organization and your position on the bill. But we do have your letter.
Oh, did we run out of time?
So, yes, we have run out of time. Yes, but state your name again and your organization.
Selena Koo, Special Education Attorney and member of CAPCA, and we're in opposition to the bill.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Jim Lenich. California Business for Education Excellence opposes this bill because, quite simply, it's a direct retreat from rigor and accountability that will have a dire effect on our state school children, in particularly the ethnic minority kids and the socioeconomically disadvantaged kids. How can we close the achievement gap if we don't even know what it is? This committee and the public should know that far less than 1/2 of 1% of the...
Sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Bill Lucy with Ed Voice. I just want to point out that the author's statement at the outset was inaccurate in terms of the bill in print. On page 30, line 31 and 32, this bill actually strikes out the notion of 3 diagnostic assessments.
Thank you.
Where Ed Voice is opposed to the bill.
Any other witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, was there a motion on the bill? I can't remember now. You moved and Ms. Buchanan second. Okay. Questions of the author? Comments? None? The motion is due pass to the Appropriations Committee. Would you like to close and maybe address some of the comments?
Thank you very much. Yes, the amendment says numerous tests, not 3. I misspoke. We did take some amendments, and I agree. I personally would have liked to have the $2 million savings gone back to 2nd grade. I had to take that out of at the Appropriations Committee in the Senate. But let me just say, children reading well and independently by the end of the 3rd grade is the goal. That is not the question here. That is what we all want for every one of our children. Learning to read is essential for reading to learn and future learning. Loving school is also essential. Loving school and seeing school as a place where a young person is successful. How many of us can remember back to a place where we failed regularly or were asked to do things that were inappropriate to our skills, and did we like those places? No. So we want to make sure that we're doing testing that is appropriate, that helps children, that is good for teaching and learning, and am really very proud of the broad range of support that we have. And I would continue to associate myself with the remarks of Linda Darling Hammond and the quoted statements from the Association for the Education of Young Children, that standardized tests at this age should be used with extreme discretion and only in appropriate settings where they're going to help teaching and learning. Finally, if California were to develop an appropriate standardized test for the 2nd grade within the core curriculum, it would have to do so pretty much by itself, because both of the consortia for the national core curricula are not planning on doing a 2nd grade test. They're not going to begin testing till the 3rd grade because they agree that before the age of 8 it's developmentally inappropriate. For English learners, for English speakers, You're all kids, and we want to help them learn. And the department's diagnostic tests, I think, will give the opportunity for good teaching and learning, and that's the most important thing. And I would ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator. And again, due pass to the Appropriations Committee. Secretary, call the roll.
Brownlee?
Aye.
Brownlee, aye. Norby?
No.
Norby, no. Amiano? Aye. Amiano, aye. Buchanan? Buchanan, aye. Butler? Butler, aye. Carter? Carter, aye. Ing? Aye. Ing, aye. Gaines? No. Gaines, no. Halderman? Wagner? Wagner, no. Williams? Aye. Williams, aye. 6, 7.
Not 9 votes, but 7 votes. Your bill's out.
Well, thank you very much.
I understand Senator Simonian is letting Senator Padilla go next. Welcome. Item 19, SB 753.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank my colleague, Senator Simonian, for his indulgence. I also want to start off by thanking you and your staff for your help both on this bill as well as SB 754, which is on consent, and particularly to thank Marisol Aviña of your staff for their diligence. On 753, I want to start off by accepting as author's amendments those clarifying amendments on page 4 of the analysis. There are 1.4 million English learners in California, and California currently succeeds in educating only 9% of English learners to proficient levels. Clearly, we must do more. Current California law requires the administration of the CELT test, which serves to identify pupils as limited English proficient, determines the level of their proficiency, and serves as an assessment tool on an annual basis to measure students' progress in acquiring English skills of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. California is one of only 2 states in the nation that administers the test in the fall semester and is impacted by what Superintendent of Public Instruction.
Excuse me, Senator. Could we not have the conversation in the committee room so we can give our full attention to the Senator?
Thank you. So the accuracy of this test, I believe, is impacted by what Superintendent of Public Instruction Tom Torlakson refers to as summer learning loss. This bill would move the annual testing window from the fall semester to the spring semester, consistent with what 48 other states do, a de facto national standard. With me in support is Robert Martinez from the Los Angeles Unified School District and Marta Diaz-Zaragoza from Californians Together.
Okay.
Second.
Wow. Okay. So moved by Mr. Amiano, seconded by Vice Chair Norby. Please proceed.
Thank you. Well, good evening, Madam Chair and members. My name is Roberto Martinez, Superintendent of Local District 5 in Los Angeles. Local District 5 covers the East Los Angeles, Northeast Los Angeles, and sections of South Los Angeles, has approximately 68,000 students in 111 schools. Of those students, 41% of them are English language learners. Our goals in Local District 5, one of our goals is to ensure that all English language learners reclassify before leaving elementary school, because to do so gives them equity and access to courses which are required to enter university and colleges upon graduating from high school, if they do so. As proposed by SB 753, by moving the testing window of the CELT, or the California English Language Development Test, from the fall to the spring, schools would have data available at the beginning of the school year. Students can be provided with intervention courses at the beginning of the year and have a full year of instruction before being tested. The spring testing window also allows schools to test all students who enroll at various times throughout the school year. Currently, schools receive CELT data in February. By this time, it is very late to provide a full year of instructional support, which will also affect the California Standards Test and thus API. In all fairness, students need to be tested on what they've been taught all year. Currently, there is a 3-month summer gap, and as soon as students come back from their summer vacation, they are tested. This is not fair to students and teachers and is detrimental to reclassification of students. We now have a term for students who have been enrolled in our schools for 6 years plus and also who have not been able to reclassify. They are called long-term English language learners. We have students in high school who entered our school system in kindergarten and have not been able to reclassify. And many of these students will become dropouts. In closing, I'd like to say that SB 753 is a bill which is truly centered on student needs, and it ensures that all educators align all efforts and resources to reclassifying students. SB 753 allows us to open the doors to an equitable education for all students. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Good afternoon, or no, I'm sorry. Good evening. Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Martha Zaragoza Diaz, representing Californians Together. Senator Padilla and Mr. Martinez really articulated very well the importance of this measure. Essentially, it would provide teachers with information regarding where their English learners are earlier in the year in order to better guide them with their instruction of those students. So I really urge and I vote on the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and members, Rand Martin on behalf of the California Charter Schools Association. We totally agree with LAUSD's perspective on this. It would be very helpful in serving ELL students in charter schools as well, and strongly support the bill. Thank you.
Very good. Next witness.
Sylvia Solis Shaw on behalf of Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa. We believe this is a sensible change that will serve as a useful tool for school districts in properly placing English learner students in the appropriate classes. We ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Patty Scripter, California State PTA, support.
Erica Hoffman, the California School Boards Association, also in support.
Elizabeth Jimenez, CEO of HEMAS Consulting. I worked with LA Unified on this project, and just wanted to add one element, and that is not only is it difficult for the students to take the test in the fall and after they've been off for a long time, but the teacher who taught that student all year long, currently the student doesn't get tested to the fall. So if I'm a 5th grade teacher, I've taught all semester or all year long, and then the student comes, they don't get tested, and the results are not reported back on my classroom or on my school. So in order to get teachers good information about their own teaching, it's important.
Thank you. Next witness.
Yes, Lynn Fox on behalf of the California Federation of Teachers in support.
Very good. Other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition?
Good evening. Sherry Griffith with the Association of California School Administrators. I think I'm a minority party tonight. We just first want to commend the author for the intent of the measure and very much appreciate the purpose. But we do have a number of concerns. This is a significant change in regards to the testing window and codification of a strict standard for that in regards to dates. First of all, we do think it's premature, actually similar to 2nd grade testing review, in that we haven't really seen what the reauthorization of ESEA will look like and how English language proficiency will be addressed. California just took on the lead role as a state to help develop language assessment for the entire nation that may have very different dates and requirements than this movement as proposed. Secondly, our members are very concerned about the extensive spring testing that already occurs, as you know, in the last couple of months, from the CASE to the CSTs to the California Modified Assessments. We are concerned about testing fatigue as addressed in the analysis. Remember, we test annually 1.5 million English learners in a very time-consuming assessment. That is very important. And so you add that, you take that ship and you turn it around and add it to that same spring testing window. And that, of course, would be of concern, not only for the time, but we also must train the teachers and those that administer this test in listening, speaking, reading, and writing, along with all of the other spring tests that these students are taking. And also, right now, the flexibility is the superintendent and the state board determine the testing window. That testing window is not short. It actually ranges from July, August, September, all the way through October 31st. So we can assess students much earlier, right after the end of the school year, during the summer or the fall, and prepare them for placement. So with that, we really don't think that there's a need to codify a new time frame. We think the current law allows for that period, and we can still meet the redesignation timeline. So with that, we cannot support it this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition? There's been a motion and a second. Questions, comments? Senator, would you like to close?
I'd ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. The motions do pass as amended to the Appropriations Committee, and you did accept the amendments, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Secretary, please call the roll.
Brownlee?
Aye.
Brownlee, I. Norby? Amiano? Aye. Amiano, I. Buchanan? Buchanan, I. Butler? Butler, I. Carter? Ing? Aye. Ing, I. Gaines? Aye. Gaines, I. Halderman? Wagner? Wagner, I. Williams? Williams, I. 8.
There was a motion by Mr. Amiano and a second by Mr. Norby. 8 votes, and Mr. Padilla's bill is out. And last but not least, Senator Simitian.
Do I understand, Madam Chair, I'm the only thing standing between the members and their exit? Is that?
That's it, although Senator Yee also has a bill to present.
Well, all right then.
All right. Item 1, SB 30.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. The bill simply makes a technical change to existing law to extend by 1 year from January 1st, 2012, January 1st, 2013, the date by which the final report of the kindergarten readiness pilot program is to be submitted. Madam Chair, this is a placeholder, really, for any issue that may need to be addressed this year regarding the implementation of the transitional kindergarten program. We passed the measure last year. We deliberately and I think wisely gave 2 years before we began to implement so that issues could be sorted out. For the most part, they are getting sorted out, and thus far, I'm pleased to say that we don't have anything really what I would call major or substantial that requires statutory address. The Superintendent of Public Instruction has been putting things up on frequently asked questions on his website. Non-governmental organizations, the Packard Foundation has been funding Preschool California's effort to make sure that the information is available there. They've been doing a great job of pulling together information around the state. Most of the issues that people come to us with on the what about this and what about that get addressed in those ways, and so far so good. But if there is a need for any kind of a statutory fix-it at the 12th hour, the vehicle is available. I, of course, understand that if we had a substantive change to the bill, it would come back to this committee, and I fully would expect that to be the case if there was a change in the bill going forward. I would respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Are there witnesses in support?
Different bill.
Okay, very good. Bill has been moved by Mr. Amiano. Is there a second on the bill? Second by Ms. Butler. And I will hold the author to his word that he will bring the bill back to the committee if it is amended in any way. And the motion is due pass to appropriations. And I don't think you need to close on this important bill. So I will have the secretary call the roll.
Brownlee?
Aye.
Brownlee, I. Norby? Amiano? Aye. Amiano, I. Buchanan? Aye. Buchanan, I. Butler? Aye. Butler, I. Carter? Ing? Aye. Ing, I. Gaines? No. Gaines, no. Halderman? Wagner? No. Wagner not voting. Williams? Aye. Williams, aye. 2, 4, 6.
6 votes. Your bill is out. Now I'll move to SB 645.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. The bill does essentially 2 things. It expands eligibility for the Charter School Facility Grant Program, as well as authorizes the California School Finance Authority to refinance working capital for charter schools. And then it also puts in place an accountability standard and process for review of charter schools. That measure, or that component of the measure, I should say, mirrors your own efforts, as you know, Madam Chair. And I think kudos to all parties for getting to yes, and particular kudos to you for having spearheaded the effort to get to yes, as I said earlier today in the Senate Education Committee.
Thank you, Senator. And you're accepting the amendments?
Yes, thank you. My apologies. Thanks to the staff. And yes, there are amendments noted on page 8 of the analysis. Happy to accept those as authors' amendments.
Excellent. Witnesses in support.
Now we're on the right bill. Rand Martin on behalf of the California Charter Schools Association. I'd simply like to say, in terms of context, that SB 645 is one of a package of bills that we have negotiated diligently and robustly with the chair, and we really appreciate the time and many hours that you and your staff have put into this. We think that as a package, between the two bills that you have and SB 645, we have a very good package that benefits charter schools in many ways. I do have with me to talk about the accountability piece Dr. David Patterson, who is superintendent of the Rockland Academy family of schools here in our own backyard, who will testify on some of these points.
Excellent. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Dr. Dave Patterson, founder and superintendent of the Rockland Academy family of schools. We have 3 schools, 2 K-6 schools that are core knowledge-based schools, and then one Western Sierra Collegiate Academy, a school for grades 7 through 12, where an A to G curriculum is our base curriculum. I think this bill, as already was spoken to, this is a bill that actually is one of substance. It's one of difficult issues that have been longstanding in discussion and concern. And I can tell you how much that's true, because it's actually still one that actually is still fiercely debated within the charter community. As someone who's been working with charter schools as an operator for a very long time, but also as someone who was with the charter movement from the very beginning, I have seen this issue become one that was first one of expectation and hope, but then grow into one where we've actually learned some stuff over the almost 20 years that charter school legislation has been in place. Charters are part of a deal. The deal is pretty straightforward. To be a performance-based school, you need the room to maneuver. You need the room to be able to do what you think is best. And in return, you have to, in fact, be accountable for results. Now, I'll tell you, frankly, that I have a hidden agenda here that's not so hidden. I think all public schools should meet that same test. But at this point in time, charters are, in fact, at the forefront of that work. And I think what we're talking about here is, in fact, a set of accountability standards that do that. I've seen the problems caused by low-performing schools, whether they be charter or not. I've seen how the additional flexibility has allowed us to do certain things that work really well. But sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. The issue is you need a chance. You need a second chance. You need to be able to have the opportunity to get it right. But at the end of the day, from the point of view of standards and point of view of students, it has to be right. And so I think the bill actually provides that opportunity. I also think the criteria provide a better snapshot of a school's performance. It adds criteria that this body and others have talked about for a long time. The API doesn't work. It is an imperfect structure. The issue is, can we create one that does work much, much better immediately? I know you're committed to doing that work. But in the meantime, we're doing the work, the Charter Association, to try to craft something better that's still not perfect. I also think this bill also speaks to some of the facilities funding issues. And I also would suggest that this bill does a number of things that improve the situation there. We as a charter school, Rockland Academy schools, we have more students on our waiting list than we have spaces. And it's a facility-based issue. And then finally, I think the issue is that we, in terms of facilities, that the bill makes a number of improvements to allow a broader access to the charter schools for facilities. Our schools,
Madam Chair, I'm going to interrupt my witness and say thank you very much. I'm mindful of the hour.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, particularly at this late hour, to testify. Any other witnesses in support of the bill? Witnesses in opposition?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members. Jason Spencer on behalf of State Superintendent of Public Instruction Tom Torlakson. Broadly, I mean, we talked about this in Assembly Education this morning, or Senate Ed this morning, so you've heard this, but the superintendent just has some concerns in general that we're moving forward with an accountability system that doesn't start to broaden the system as we had, it seems like a long time ago, but a few hours ago, a conversation about SB 547 in this room. So not looking at just math and test scores as part of the API, the superintendent would like to see a much broader accountability and really sees charter schools as an opportunity to be innovative and broaden that system and looking at things like graduation rates, retention rates, dropouts. We have a lot of charter schools that are doing wonderful things with low-performing students and at-risk students that are reducing dropout rates and increasing retention, and things that aren't recognized in just the straight API, whether we're talking about growth or the ranking deciles. On the fiscal concerns as far as this piece, as folks know, we asked for the department asked for 10.5 positions in the budget to really just bring our charter division up to current workload. We only got 3.5 of those positions funded in the budget. The appeals process and the alternative determination process that's included in the bill will definitely increase workload, and we have some concerns there, but they're mainly fiscal. So we'll sort of save you some time there. Just a couple of comments on the facilities piece, and I should have started here, Senator Smitty. We're not opposed to this bill at all. Just wanted to take the opportunity to mention some of our concerns and technical pieces, since we weren't part of the negotiations that sort of came here, brought us to this point at the end of last week. So we're not opposed, but want to express those concerns. There are some technical pieces. It seems to our folks like we're using the term charter school and site interchangeably, and in charter schools, the school may have multi-sites, and the site piece we may not actually. So some of the ways that we collect data, we collect it at the charter school level, but we may not actually be able to push the funding out to the site level at the multi-site charter schools, the way the bill is currently drafted. One concern there, and then on the reduction of the ratcheting down of the free and reduced price lunch from 70 to 50%, we see that 50% number as too low. I mean, the state average, about 55% of students are in the free and reduced lunch program. We'd like to see that number stay closer to 60 and not go below 60. If as the policy goal of the charter schools facility grant early on was to make sure that we were really achieving gains for low-income students. So we'd like to see that number stay at least at 60. And then our program folks also have some concerns with the non-classroom based instruction language, really because it would be either self-reporting, I mean, is really the only way we could go about it at this point. So it would be self-reporting from the charter schools, which is fine. But if there's any real ability for the department to make that determination, anything more than just self-reporting, there would be some, again, significant workload issues that we would, not in this committee, but in Appropriations Committee, really want to see the positions appropriated to do the work. And then the final piece is when we're talking about allocating the facilities grants. There's some language there around an advance payment of the facilities grant would be really helpful and useful to our folks to identify that this is an advance payment and not the full payment going out the door. The final piece, we'd like to really, I think in a perfect world, eliminate the alternative eligibility for charter schools based on the attendance area. And the rationale for that is that there have been, many instances as we're doing the verification of current applications where districts or charter schools are identifying a school that's potentially nearby, but not necessarily in the service area, and the students aren't coming from there. So you may be identifying a school that's got 70%, and we have many examples of them, the most egregious of which is where the actual population of the charter school is around 15% free and reduced lunch. So I think our folks would like to see that verification be of the actual attendance of the student body and not just the attendance area, because it seems to be something that's very easily skirted at this point. Thank you very much.
Did you repeat all that? Only kidding. Yeah.
Madam Chair, members, Brian Shea Jones on behalf of K-12, Gateway Community Charters, and Chico Country Day Charter School. We're opposed to the measure for many reasons. Briefly, we believe the amendments to the Charter School Facility Grant Program break the deal that we struck with the Speaker's Office, UTLA, LA Unified and the advancement project about 5 or 6 years ago, those dollars were always intended to go to charter school students in low-income areas. So I believe stretching that to non-classroom-based schools, dropping it to a percentage which is below the statewide average is a mistake, and it's something that we had talked about in depth when we negotiate out the agreement to get the year-round grants from LA Unified. Additionally, we have an issue with the usurping of local authority and actually sending some of your renewals to the State Board of Education. That's a problem from our perspective. We believe the local LEA should still have a role to play. We would question whether 700 is the right number in the API. I don't know how the association came up with that number. I understand that they say there'll be a couple schools caught up. Our data shows us there'll be about 96 schools caught up. When you look at that from K-12's perspective, they are a K through 12 charter school, and since they are CDE always compares their schools to elementary schools, even if they're high school students. That's just how they're compared under the decile rankings. So for those reasons and many others, we would oppose the measure.
Next witness, briefly.
Eric Premack, Charter Schools Development Center, associate myself with those comments. Just want to add a couple. We're very concerned about the use of PI5 as what I call a head severing or charter severing mechanism, particularly given that virtually every school in the state will be PI5 over the next several years. We're very concerned about the very vague and fuzzy demographic language. We like the intent, but the language we think has a lot of technical problems with it. And we think that the state superintendent and state board are completely and utterly unprepared for the workload that would be associated with this number of schools coming up for very complex reviews in many cases. Right now, they're already several months behind in their workload. This, we think, would exacerbate the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Madam Chair and members, Brian Rivas on behalf of the California School Boards Association in opposition to the measure. Very briefly, the bill allows for discretion in the renewal process, but as we read it, it shifts that discretion entirely to the State Board of Education, because if a charter does not meet the higher standards according to the scores or the rankings that are specified in the bill, it could only be renewed if the State Board grants a determination of academic eligibility. If the State Board says no to that request, then the process is over and the renewal never comes before the local entity. If the State Board approves that request for the determination of academic eligibility, we would argue that that, in effect, is a final decision, because at the local level, the local authorizer could deny the renewal request, but we expect the State Board to approve any petition upon appeal that it granted one of these determinations to. So for those reasons, we're opposed.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition?
Good evening, Madam Chair. Katrina Abston, Head of School for California Virtual Academies. We're opposing for the reasons that everyone else has stated. In addition, a longtime member of CSA, part of the member council, and we have opposed since the beginning.
Laura Preston with the Association of California School Administrators. We are also in opposition.
Thank you. Okay. Questions of the author? Ms. Buchanan.
Yeah. We discussed this early on, and I met with a number of groups, Rand and I, on the bill, and I still have a problem with taking away local discretion. If local school boards, I mean, you're electing them to make decisions about the schools locally, they can grant a charter, but you're taking discretion away from them to say this school's at 680 and, you know, it serves a very difficult population or whatever. You're taking their discretion, and the people in the local community elected them to make decisions. You're taking that discretion and you're passing it up to the state level.
Let me try and recharacterize it slightly, if I may, and see if I can assuage the concern. Madam Chair, you know this because our language, your language, and my language are now identical. Here's what the bill says on accountability, members. It says there's a deal. Speaking of deals, there's a deal. You get some flexibility. You don't have to follow all the rules. But in exchange for getting that flexibility and not following all the rules, you have to deliver for the kids you serve. As your analysis indicates, I think it's at page 5, we've got a lot of schools that do real good work. Most of them, frankly, are just sort of average. But looking at your analysis, 37% deliver learning results that are significantly worse than their students would have realized had they remained in traditional public schools. The goal was not to perpetuate that kind of performance. The goal was to improve performance in exchange for the flexibility. Now, what does the bill actually say? Let's put aside the sort of pieces that people have picked at. It says, hey, if you're dealing with a particularly challenging population and you are participating in an alternative accountability system, you're good. Then it says, can you deliver on the API, 700 points or above? If you can, you're good. Okay, maybe you can't. Maybe that's not the right measure. Can you deliver on growth to the tune of 50 points growth over the period of 3 years? Because some people are going to have an easy time getting to 700, as you know, Assembly Member, because that's the population they're serving. But we understand that not everybody's serving that population, and so is there growth available? And if they can't do that, then the question is, are they at least in the top half of schools that are serving, and this is important, a demographically comparable school? So we're comparing, performance with a particular group of kids to a particular group of kids. Now, even if, I want you to think about this, members, you're not delivering 700 API, okay, you're not delivering growth over 3 years, okay, you're not in the top half,